Hey guys, welcome back to another tutorial. If you just want to skip straight to the content, there's a timestamp on screen and there's also chapters down below on the timeline, and you can just skip this intro. I just want to say thank you so much for the support on the last video. Honestly, I was just so sick of every single combo video, quote unquote, being just an excuse to money grab on this game. It's a new game, so medium to large size channels are just going to put out essentially garbage, which is 30 minutes of them floating around in the practice room talking about, you can try this. Oh, well, I guess this doesn't work. Maybe you can do this one. It's unedited. It's just a pure blatant money grab, and I was just sick of it. Like I said, I know many of you were, as you told me in the comments, and so I decided to put in the work, go in the practice room, find out what exactly were the devs thinking when they structured how combos and offense is supposed to work. And I think I did a pretty good job of setting a sort of baseline for this is the sort of combo philosophy. And obviously it helped many of you, and you let me know that in the comments with and with likes and subscriptions, and I really appreciate that, guys. It means so much to me. Anyway, in this video we're going to be talking about defense and counters. Just like with my last video, this isn't going to be an exhaustive video where we talk about every single option and every single possible thing. It's another one of these just to give you a base understanding of what are your options and what are the pros and cons. I highly recommend watching my last video, as we're going to be discussing a lot of concepts from there that I won't be able to flesh out in this video. So if you don't want to be confused, please go watch that last video. I really hope you guys enjoy this one as much as you enjoyed the last one. If you do enjoy this content, please subscribe if you haven't already, like the video and comment, and share it with your friends. And let's just get right into the tutorial. Alright, so let's talk about guarding. There are three different types of guards. There's a neutral guard, a high guard, and a low guard. One thing to keep in mind is if you're guarding and you're just holding it down, your character actually does not change direction. So someone in front of you can just get behind you easily and start hitting you from the back. So be sure not to just hold down guard mindlessly. And as you probably already know, guard is going to guard most frontal rush and key attacks. But there are a few ways your guard can be broken. So to break a neutral guard, you can do a down smash fully held or an up smash fully held. High block will guard the down smash, as well as flying kicks. And low guard is going to block the up smash, as well as a fully held lift strike and a fully held grand slash. Now there are some chains that will break all guards. This includes if you fully hold the heavy finish, fully held rolling hammer, a medium hold on the key blast cannon, and a medium hold on the blaster wave. Now on the moves for which the medium hold guard breaks, if you fully hold them, they will actually connect on block, such as the blaster wave and the key blast cannon. A fully held rush key wave does not guard break or connect, and if you time your guard when the rush key wave hits, you'll actually be able to vanish. Next, let's talk about perception. So perception can be done by holding B on standard controls and is used to counter rush attacks, but it does drain your key while you hold it, as you can see there. Perception will also lose to grabs. And if you don't have any skill points, a smash attack will also beat your perception. A perception can also be used to counter a revenge counter, which we will be going over later, but that does cost you 2 skill points to do. As you just saw there, I was also able to cancel my second hit into perception immediately. You're actually able to cancel your rush attacks into perception at any time without having to wait for your rush attacks to finish. You can practice knowing when to do a perception after a revenge counter by going to the training settings, going to opponent settings, and setting your opponent strategy to revenge counter, walking up to your opponent, doing a rush attack on them, and waiting for them to do the revenge counter and pressing perception. There's also a technique called mid-air perception. This is after you're hit with a lift strike, you can press perception and counter your opponent, and this only uses key and does not use any skill points. Next is super perception, and super perception is basically a perception that you can use against charged attacks such as lift strikes, grand slashes, and smash attacks, and these cost 1 skill point. can also use your perception to deflect or nullify blast attacks or 2 skill points. You can deflect the attack by holding your perception as the attack is incoming, or you can absorb the attack by pressing perception right when the attack hits. As you can see, after you deflect or nullify these attacks, you get this upgrade underneath your key bar, and what this basically does is it increases the amount of ki you gain while you charge. So you're able to fill up your meter faster. This also works on rush type blasts, although the effect is different and instead it sends your opponent flying, but it still costs 2 skill points. Next, let's talk about super counters. Super counter is the easiest counter to explain. It costs no resources at all, and all you have to do is time up X with an opponent's physical attack. That can be a smash attack, a rush attack, or any other physical attack. It can work in the middle of a string as well. Super counter also has the strictest timing of any counter. It can also be done on block or while you're getting hit. And you can also counter while you're getting hit from behind. Super counters can most easily be countered by a high speed evasion, which we will go over later, but it's basically holding the block button right when the super counter is about to hit. Next, let's talk about revenge counter, and man, there is a lot to this one. So this is done by pressing R3, which is directly pressing on your right stick. There's 3 types of revenge counters. There's a short range, mid range, and long range. And regardless of what range you're doing this at, it's always going to cost 2 skill points. You can also do this while you're getting hit from behind. So as I mentioned in the perception section, you can counter a revenge counter by pressing perception for 2 skill points. This sends your opponent flying and is available for follow-ups. Check out my last video so you can see what follow-ups are available when you send an opponent flying backwards. If they do another revenge counter after you've done perception, you actually have a lot of options after this. You can either block, vanish, or sidestep. But as far as I can tell, you cannot super counter, which I've tried many times, but maybe you can. You can also counter a revenge counter with a revenge counter of your own. Although if you're going to use 2 skill points, you might as well use the perception anyway. You can also counter a revenge counter with a super counter. And this is where a weakness of super counter is shown, because if somebody revenge counters your super counter, you either have to take the hit or use perception. You can obviously also use your own revenge counter as well. So next, let's move into mid-range revenge counters. So a mid-range revenge counter is exactly what it sounds like. It's a revenge counter done from not close range and not too far away, but about mid-range, kind of about right here, this distance to the opponent. And let's talk about what you can do if your opponent revenge counters from this distance. You can counter this hit with a high speed evasion. Again, we will talk about this later, but this is basically when you hit the block button right when the opponent's about to hit you. And you can actually do this completely for free. It costs no key, but you do not get a follow-up hit on it. You can of course also use perception, as with every other revenge counter, for 2 skill points. And this sends your opponent crashing into the ground. You can also super counter. And you can of course do your own revenge counter. And finally, let's talk about a long-range revenge counter. So you can tell a long-range revenge counter happens when the opponent dragon rushes at you. Obviously, like with every other revenge counter, you can use perception, as well as your own revenge counter. As far as I can tell, you cannot use a super counter or a high-speed evasion. I've tried several times, maybe my timing is just off for both. But you are able to use a blast attack. This does cause an impact with a rush type attack. So let's talk about high speed evasion. I've already mentioned this in a couple other sections, and I'm sure if you played the game for any amount of time, you've already experienced this. This is basically when you hit the block button right when an attack hits, and it causes you to vanish behind an opponent. But let's look under the hood and see exactly how the mechanics work for this. So the first type of high speed evasion is when a charged attack hits. So charged attack examples are like smash attacks, lift strikes, and rush chain enders, as some rush chains end with attacks that are able to be charged. And when a high speed evasion is done in this way, it costs no resources, but you do not get a follow-up attack. The second type is with most moves that would send you flying, such as a vanish, or moves that are done through follow-ups. Be sure to watch my last video to know what I mean by follow-ups. Now, although a smash attack does send you flying, this is not included in the second type of high speed evasion. This type of high speed evasion does have its follow-up attack to it, and does drain ki whenever you do it. And when it connects, it sends the opponent flying. Now, I'm sure that last one is the one most people are familiar with, and that one does drain ki. So if you're both perfect and are constantly getting the high speed evasion one after another, whoever has the most ki is going to come out on top. Now let's talk about a unique type of high speed evasion. It's called rush high speed return, and it's its own unique little type of high speed evasion. It's done in response to a rush high speed movement by the opponent. And a rush high speed movement is when you're doing your attack on the opponent and you press the block button and some direction to vanish. Now your opponent can counter this by pressing the block button right when you vanish as well, and they will be doing a rush high speed return. Now this is not like the first type of high speed evasion, because this one actually drains ki even though you don't have a follow-up attack. Like I said, it's a little unique, but I think it's worth mentioning. And you can actually practice this by going to training settings, opponent settings, rush high speed movement, and you'll be able to practice going back and forth with this. Be sure not to have maxed out ki on, because you can literally do this forever. And finally, let's talk about Sonic Sway. Now, this one is super simple. You hit the perception button right when a rush attack lands. Now, this can be the first rush attack, or this can be the second, third, or fourth hit of the chain, but it's way harder to hit it on the first one. Your timing has to be pretty much perfect, and that's not going to be viable for most gameplay. I think the best way to implement this in a realistic way is to go into training settings, go to opponent settings, turn on rush attacks, wait for your opponent to approach you, just block the whole time, and try to time your perception right when he hits one of his hits. I usually try to do it on the third one. Now, as you can see, this drains your opponent's ki, and it throws them back. It doesn't really give you any other real advantage other than draining their ki. As you can see, it can be done on the first hit or the second, third. But as far as I'm aware, it can only be done during rush attacks and not during rush chain enders or any other attack. And that was Sonic Sway. So that's going to wrap it up for our counter/defense video. Again, this wasn't supposed to cover everything. It's just supposed to give you a solid foundation from which to build off of. The goal of these types of videos is just to sort of demystify the game, so you don't look at the screen and think, what the hell is going on? You at least have some idea of what's happening and why it happened. But again, this is just a jumping off point. The type of video, again, that I wish I would have had when I was looking this stuff up. If you enjoyed this video, guys, please do not forget to like, subscribe, comment, and share the video. You guys were awesome about that on my last video. I really appreciate that. I hope this one can be just as good as the last one and just as helpful. If there's anything else y'all would like to see, let me know and I'll try my best. But that's going to be it. See ya.